Congresswoman-elect, thanks very much. Monica De La Cruz laying it all out for us. We'll be watching your efforts on this.
Growing up, I had chronic knee problems.
On this quick break, and then billions of dollars from American investors funding the expansion of Communist Party of China. Now, after decades of intellectual property theft and surveillance programs, the CCP has infiltrated virtually every industry in America. Technology executive Brian Costello and former House Intel senior investigator Colonel Derek Harvey are here on who is making money in allowing the CCP to be inside the gates of America. We've got an inside look when we...
And economic security, our national security, is that from China.
And that was FBI Director Christopher Wray testifying last week in front of the Senate Homeland Security Committee on the national security threats facing America today. The Communist Party of China representing the single biggest threat, according to Christopher Wray. Joining me right now, one of the people who worked on the House Intelligence Committee investigation into China, along with then Congressman Devin Nunes. Colonel Derek Harvey is here. He was on the National Security Council in 2017. Also with us is Brian Costello, whose background is in international finance. Gentlemen, it is great to have you both here. We so appreciate your time this morning. And Colonel, I want to begin with you. We keep hearing the FBI tell us how big a threat the Chinese Communist Party is to America. What can you tell us about that investigation? Devin Nunes actually broke that news of his investigation on this program 3 years ago. Where did it go, and what can you tell us about it?
Oh, thank you, Maria. I'm glad to be here. Chairman Nunes has always been focused on the Chinese threat, and I led an investigation into the role of China in trying to influence, manipulate, and coerce a range of companies across almost every business sector, to include academia and entertainment. The intelligence community, whether it's DNI, CIA, FBI, are all very concerned about the role that China is doing to try to influence American politics and policy from the national level down to the local level. So we were trying to understand what is the scope of what China is doing to try to influence American companies. We were particularly concerned about the role of one company in the venture capital arena that seemed to be the prime example of how China uses its influence, and that company was Sequoia Capital.
Sequoia Capital, one of the companies that you were looking at, and this one in particular, you told me that you sent them notice. Did they get back to you? Tell me what happened when you reached out to Sequoia.
Well, we were concerned, and we laid out our concerns to Sequoia leadership, and we sent them about 28 questions about the role of their leadership, their interactions with Chinese Communist Party members, and the fact that some individuals that were global stewards of Sequoia Capital were of particular concern given their intersection with Chinese Politburo leadership in China. The activities of what Sequoia was financing, civil use, military use, high-tech, biosciences that had dual civil military benefits for China, was directly undermining American national security and American economic interests. We never did get a response from Sequoia Capital. We got responses from dozens of other companies, but Sequoia Capital did not respond to us.
Brian, talk to us about what you know about this. We did speak with the PR manager of Sequoia Capital. He said he has no idea about any investigation. But Brian, we also know that Neil Shen is one of the leaders at Sequoia, and you say that he is the sole delegate representing the venture capital industry in the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference.
Start your descent.
Tuesday nights
Let's dive
on the History Channel. Dive into the biggest
conference. Tell us more.
Yeah, Maria, thank you and good morning. So Neil Shen is a member of something they refer to as the CPPCC, which is the top political advisory body in the Chinese Communist government. And what the people in the CPPCC do is they sit down yearly with the top members of the Politburo, the Standing Committee, and then they also meet quarterly, ad hoc to sit down and advise strategies. You know, I stumbled across this back in 2018 as part of civil litigation. I'm not a politician. I'm a business guy. Brought it to the attention of the government. It was very concerning that America's top investment firm was actually employing a direct advisor to the Politburo.
So we spoke with Sequoia Capital, and they told us that Neil Shen has nothing to do with Sequoia Capital, but he runs Sequoia China. Here is the statement that the PR firm gave us who represents Sequoia. Neil Shen has no involvement with Sequoia Capital's U.S. investment or business decisions. He manages Sequoia China, which is a separate legal entity, and he has never shared non-public company information with any government and would honor confidentiality if ever asked. Your reaction?
Yeah, you know, when I read that, it has as many holes as the Spies Who Lied letter that they read when the Hunter Biden laptop wasn't real. You know, the Sequoia principals are public figures. They speak all the time. So their story around Shen's involvement with Sequoia is involved from, hey, we're the top investors in China, to, well, Sequoia is an affiliate, to now there's no involvement whatsoever with Sequoia. I will tell you, Maria, when the Trump administration banned TikTok, Sequoia publicly took the exact opposite position, which is the Sequoia's ownership in TikTok, which was around 10%, and Neil Shen is a board member. Their position was the exact opposite. It was like, hey, these are owned by U.S. entities, and in an intelligence report, it even referred to Sequoia as the U.S. Sequoia China as an affiliate of the U.S. company.
I mean, look, he is a real rainmaker. He's very well known, Neil Shen, throughout venture capital and technology, Colonel. He has a recent focus on biotechnology, manufacturing, singling a little bit of a pivot to different startups away from just generic technology. Your thoughts on what he's trying to do here? Is this one of the ways that the Chinese Communist Party has infiltrated American business?
Well, we think it is, and we're very concerned about it, and that's why we hoped that the Securities Exchange Commission and the Department of Justice would pursue investigations in these areas. We think that Neil Shen's role, and by the way, he figured prominently on their web pages, identified as a global steward for the company on the board, and he spoke very publicly about his access to American information and how that would benefit China. So now, whether the Sequoia leadership is witting or unwitting about the role and the threat to American security because of what they are doing in China, we don't know, but that is worth pursuing. We know that the committee, as well as the FBI, was very concerned about this, but there's been a blockage at the senior levels of DOJ and the SEC.
Why is there a blockage at the senior levels of the DOJ, Brian? What are your thoughts? We should also point out that isn't it true that there was a major investment in FTX, which is the company that we're all talking about right now, which has suddenly $2 billion in investor money has disappeared?
Yeah, Maria, the Sequoia principals themselves, Michael Moritz and Doug Leone, as well as two of their portfolio companies, Citadel and FTX, are responsible for $150 million, or just under $150 million, just in the midterm investments. So their political clout is huge. And this is an exclusive for your show. And in February, I was interviewed by the FBI and the DOJ related to a number of securities fraud claims and allegations that I had uncovered as part of my civil litigation. And it was very clear to me the Department of Justice and the FBI had certain areas they wanted to go near and certain areas they wanted to avoid.
Well, I mean, that's a good point, because for the last 4 years, and certainly under the Trump era, all we heard about is Russia, Russia, Russia. And yet now we understand money transferred around China. Are they getting paid? Why would they not attack the number one adversary of America and stop this infiltrating of American business? Real quick.
You know, even worse, Maria, after I met with them in the beginning of February, 2 or 3 weeks later, the DOJ initiative was ended. And if you look, you know, groups like the American Civil Liberties Union and Stanford and Yale were the ones kind of driving it. And Sequoia has penetrated those organizations with significant donations from the principals.
Donations. That is exactly what I was wondering. Brian, Colonel, we have to continue this conversation. We will do so, and we hope you'll come back. in the coming weeks to continue. Thank you very much for
Thank
that
you, Maria.
exclusive and for
Thank you,
laying it
Maria.
all out.
Joe Biden is highly compromised. Why else would we cancel the China initiative, the DOJ program designed to investigate China's theft of our intellectual property from colleges and universities? It made no sense whatsoever. There's only one explanation. Joe Biden is compromised.
Well, that was Senator Ron Johnson on this program last week on the impact of.
Are you still wearing enough layers to insulate Alaska? That's why you need the new and improved bearskin hoodie. This
Impact of Biden family influence peddling, which reportedly goes back many decades, by the way. My next guests announced on Thursday that the House will pick up where the Senate left off in looking at the 150 suspicious activity reports flagged by the major banks of the Biden family bank accounts after years of making millions by offering foreigners access to their family and inroads into acquisitions in America. Joining me right now is the ranking member of the House Oversight Committee, James Comer, and the ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee, Jim Jordan. Both are expected to assume the role of the chairman of those respective committees. Good morning to you both, gentlemen. Thank you so much for being here.
Morning.
Good morning.
James Comer, let me kick this off with you and get your take on this 150 suspicious activity reports. Most people will never get a suspicious activity report, right? What is it and how come they were flagged by the banks?
99.99% of Americans will never get a suspicious activity report. These were created after September 11th for the government to be able to track suspicious foreign transactions coming in to fund terror sales. It's expanded over time to help law enforcement track things like money laundering. But when a bank files a suspicious activity report, that's the bank notifying the federal government that we're pretty certain our client has committed a crime. Hunter Biden and Jim Biden have at least 150 of these. We believe Joe Biden's name was on some of those accounts. That's why we want them. But the suspicious activity reports are very detailed as to why the bank suspected that criminal activity was taking place by the Bidens.
Well, look, I've said it from day one. This is not a Hunter Biden story. This is a Joe Biden story because they were basically selling access to Joe Biden. We know we have all the emails, the big guy email where Joe Biden was supposed to be holding 10% equity into CEFC, the Chinese energy company. How are we supposed to trust that the commander-in-chief of America is going to make the right decisions on behalf of America when he's taking in all of this money? Hunter Biden's been paying his bills. That also is indicative that he was clearly the one that they were selling.
Right. That's very troubling. What we showed at the press conference was a map of the United States in Chinese where all the natural gas distributors were highlighted. And the business model that Hunter Biden was presenting to the Chinese was a way for China to come in and not only buy liquefied natural gas from America, but also to start buying ownership in the drillers so that China could start taking ownership in our American energy company. And remember, we also showed emails and text messages that showed Joe Biden was going to be a 10% equity owner in this business. He was even going to have office space in this business. This is very troubling at a time when America is faced with record high energy prices because of bad policies from this administration.
Well, we want to know what you all are going to do about it because Jim Jordan, what did we hear on Friday from Merrick Garland, the Attorney General? The DOJ lead person puts a special counsel on the Trump investigations. Yeah. Where is the special counsel on the Biden family influence peddling?
Yeah. Well, I think it's just one more example of how political the Justice Department has become, and it's why 14 whistleblowers have come and told us that, 14 FBI agents. But I want to go back. I want to go back to May of 2013. The Inspector General at the Treasury Department issues a report and says Obama's IRS targeted conservatives. In our investigation at that time, we discovered that the Department of Justice was trying to find ways to prosecute the very people who Obama's IRS targeted. And Maria, guess who? Guess who was the lead person at the Justice Department looking for ways to target and prosecute the very people Lois Lerner went after? Jack Smith, the guy Merrick Garland just named as special counsel to go after President Trump. Now think about this in the broad sense. In 2016, they spied on President Trump's campaign. In 2018, it was the Mueller investigation. In 2020, they suppressed the Hunter Biden story just days before the most important election we have. And in 2022, 91 days before the midterm election, they raided President Trump's home. And then this week, 3 days after President Trump announces he's running for president, 1 day after Mr. Comer did his press conference, guess what? Merrick Garland says we're going to put in as the special counsel the very individual who was at the Justice Department and was looking for ways to prosecute the people Lois Lerner and Obama's IRS targeted. If that's not a political Justice Department, I don't know what is. So this is why we're going to look into this issue, and we're going to get to the bottom of everything they've been doing at the politicized DOJ.
Well, you all will have the gavel. James Comer, how do they keep getting away with all of this politicizing? Are you going to subpoena Joe Biden? Are you going to subpoena all of those involved in allowing China and the Communist Party to get inside the gates of America by paying off certain individuals like the Biden family?
We're going to subpoena whoever the investigation leads us to subpoena. We're serious about this. We're going to start with the bank records. We need those bank records. You've seen countless emails and text messages where Hunter has complained about having to keep his father up. There's no question that Joe Biden was receiving benefit from Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden's only source of income were our adversaries in China and Russia. So this is very concerning. The American people deserve answers. We deserve to know if we have a White House that's compromised by China, and that's going to be our priority in the House Oversight Committee.
Well, talk to us about these transactions because, you know, they've tried to leak to the press that Hunter Biden is going to be charged with tax issues. Is it because he wasn't paying taxes on all of the money that Chinese officials and Ukrainian officials and Russian officials were wiring into his account?
Right. Yeah, he has at least a $2 million.
This is a farm. No, really, this is a farm. So is this, and this.
$2 million tax bill with the IRS. I don't know how many people you know that owe the IRS over $2 million, but Hunter Biden is one of them. But honestly, Maria, the tax evasion is the least of Hunter Biden's problems. And my fear is if the DOJ indicts Hunter Biden, then that will essentially protect him from a congressional subpoena from the House Oversight Committee. So I'm not advocating for Hunter Biden to be indicted. I'm not advocating for a special counsel because I believe that if the Treasury Cabinet and if the banks will work with us, we'll be able to get answers to the most important questions on the House Oversight.
Jim Jordan, how did this happen? How did the DOJ and the FBI become so politicized? We know what they did around the Russia collusion story. They had no evidence of any collusion with Trump, and yet they pursued FISA warrants to spy and surveil people within the Trump world aggressively.
I don't know how it happened, but I know it has to change because America is the greatest country in history, but we're not America. America is not America if you have a Justice Department that treats people differently under the law. It's not supposed to work that way. And it's why 14 agents have come talk to us as whistleblowers. And what they have said is at the highest levels, not the rank and file, but at the Washington field office of the FBI, at the highest levels of the Justice Department, that's where the politics is. One of these agents said it's rotted at its core. That's how bad it is. So look, I remember this too. If you need any more, go back to Mr. Smith again. Jack Smith, there was back in 2013, his section that he ran at the Justice Department not only was looking for ways to prosecute the very people who were targeted by Obama's IRS, that they also asked the IRS to give them confidential taxpayer information, and the IRS complied. Think about that. Wow. You had the Justice Department saying, we want information we're not supposed to get. Give it to us. And the IRS gave it to them. So this is it seems to me a pattern.
Mark on the quality of candidates to holding up funding for Republicans in close races. In the election for Senate Republican leadership, 37 GOP senators backed McConnell.
So there you go, guys. I wanted to make sure we got that out. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out. See how long this lasts before they take my channel down is what it is. God bless everybody. Have a great Thanksgiving.